Stocks, docks and barrels. This morning's Big Business Recap.
Morning, everybody. Welcome back to the program. And yes, we're talking about Bitcoin again. It reached another fresh high. The price crossing a major milestone over the weekend after the market value reached more than $1 trillion, leaving some major backers even surprised. Ethereum, the second largest cryptocurrency after Bitcoin, also hit record highs as well. Bitcoin at the moment is trading at just around $56,600 for a single Bitcoin. So it's essentially recording new highs right now. And a lot of commentary on this analysis as well. Elon Musk taking to Twitter to discuss the situation. He said money is just data that allows us to avoid the inconvenience of barter. The data, like all data, is subject to latency and error. The system will evolve to that which minimizes both. And in the following post, he said, quote, "That said, Bitcoin and Ethereum do seem high." He said that in a response to a user who said gold was better than both Bitcoin and cash.
Yeah, gold has also been collapsing in prices, looking at the losing streak, which continued on Friday as well. And we've seen the price of gold dropping by 0.3% to $1,769 per ounce. That was its lowest since July 2. Earlier in the season. At the moment, it is trading at $1,784.185 an ounce, and it is something that is worth noting as well. But looking at the world of Bitcoin, it certainly is a place that many people would be thinking, should they be investing? Because looking at the pricing, so for an average UAE consumer, one Bitcoin is going to set you back about 207,895 dirhams 99. So it's not a mediocre amount at all. And if we were to look at it in US dollar perspective, $56,000, 599. We were talking about this earlier last week, and I said I'm very sad, and that was when it was only 42.
You're gonna be sad every week.
I'm gonna be sad now.
See, the thing is, I'm no investor, and I'm no stock market expert or anything, but bear with me here. Investing in Bitcoin.
Yes.
Now, right now, as you said, I believe one Bitcoin is equivalent to 208, about that, 208,000 United Arab Emirate dirhams, right?
Yes.
And if you want to compare that with, for example, Ethereum price, or the other one, right?
Other cryptocurrency.
Yeah, the
other
second largest one,
cryptocurrencies,
yeah.
Right? So that is about 7,150.
Yes.
Right? Big difference, obviously. So if you want to, let's say, invest or put in 1,000 dirhams, let's say 1,000 dirhams for Bitcoin, what are the chances of the Bitcoin, the Bitcoin for 1,000 for your investment doubling with Bitcoin? And what are the chances with, for example, Ethereum doubling with that price? Especially with cryptocurrencies in general, they're increasing, right? Their use is increasing, or the use of blockchain technology, that it's becoming more attractive and it's becoming more successful, and people are using it now. And so that's my concern as well. What are the chances of Bitcoin, they're doubling, like its price doubling right now, going from 2008, let's say, to 400?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it could be described as a speculative bubble right now.
Yeah.
Because you go on the headlines.
I mean, I'm thinking let's kind of invest in a less volatile cryptocurrency.
Right.
You're absolutely right about that. And in fact, on that note, a chief investment officer of a major wealth manager, Will Hobbs, the CIO of Barclays Wealth and Investments, had a lot to say about Bitcoin recently following this latest surge in the price. Said his firm is not interested in Bitcoin at the moment, despite its record-breaking rally. And he said that this currency is backed by, quote, a lot of magical thinking, and that it sounds, quote, increasingly cultist. And he cited volatility as a primary reason. And also, the whole thing about institutional investors joining the fray, while true to an extent, retail investors are the central drivers of the Bitcoin. According to analysts at JP Morgan, they said there's been relatively little institutional flow over the past 5 months. But going back to what Hobbs from Barclays Wealth Management said, he said that they're staying away from Bitcoin because of its wild price swings, and a view that is reportedly shared by many money managers. The exact quote is, "It is multiples more volatile than our most white-knuckle ride asset class, which is emerging market equities. In order for an asset to make it into our asset class toolkit, it has to satisfy a couple of things. One, it has to have a positive expected return, obviously. And the other is it has to have some diversification appeal. Now, it may well be over time that Bitcoin satisfies both of those, but at the moment, it's very hard to say. So we'll wait on the sidelines and watch others." But he did sort of express the caution that it almost sounds like this religion about Bitcoin and a blind faith into where it's heading, and some really odd usage trends. And of course, the volatility that you, Rania, cited are major warnings and red flags for Bitcoin right now that a lot of people are sort of eyeing and staying away from.
Yeah, at the moment, even their own website that says we're an innovative payment network and a new kind of money. A lot of analysts have also been speaking at different platforms, some saying, especially the ones quoted by Forbes recently on their article, saying what next for Bitcoin. And one of the analysts says, "I think Bitcoin will repeat the fallback it suffered in 2017, just as the rise of the bubble has repeated." And Ronnie also asked us, saying, what is your likelihood of it doubling? I remember back in December 2020, and a friend of mine were having a nice dinner, open-air dinner, because the weather was amazing, weather's still amazing. And he said, "You know what, I have invested a lot in Bitcoin, I think you should do too." And it was about $17,000 at that stage.
Right.
And I was thinking, yeah, it's okay. Then it reached 21,000. It's like, okay, it's fine. 22. Then a lot more from my friends got involved when it was 29,000. Now it stands at $56,000 Bitcoin.
That's right, yeah.
If you follow the bandwagon, you'll be upset, like myself. But then when you look at the potential and likelihood of it crashing down, that's when you think, that's when you'll think, thank God I still have my money on.
Yeah. And that's big as well, because
Yeah.
a lot of what happens with these rallies is they're driven by certain narratives. It reminds me of the Reddit thing with the GameStop stock. Everybody was just blindly buying up that stock, and they even to this day, even though the stock has plummeted insanely so, and the hedge funds have recovered, and the institutional investors are the ones who are suffering. The retail investors, not the institutional ones. They're still sticking to the narratives that hold, it's going to be okay. And you could see the same blind faith in Bitcoin. Analysts are saying that the reason that Bitcoin has been on this rally is this unprecedented stimulus from governments, from central banks around the world, this ultra-cheap borrowing that's been the key driver of the Bitcoin rally. But what's going to happen if interest rates turn positive? What's going to happen when that occurs? The Bitcoin analysts say might suddenly look like a flightless bird because, if you get positive yield from lending to the US or UK government, why are you going to get your own Bitcoin? So, right now they're saying it's too early to tell the exact nature of the Bitcoin, but there's a big momentum narrative, a lot of media stories as well, and a lot of faith that this currency might double over by the end of this year. But it is volatile, and there are a lot of factors here that could cause another crash in the prices, just like we saw in 2017, and leave a whole lot of retail investors without money.
I'm just saying that Bitcoin is it's an incredibly risky investment. From my point of view, it's an incredibly risky investment. It may not pay off. It may pay off, and it may not pay off. And that's why we should aim to invest in different companies or from different industries, rather than just focusing on Bitcoin and being infatuated with the surge in its value. And that's just my 2 cents on this.
I think of it this way, that if you can't live in it, you can't chew it, you can't flaunt it, what's the point in buying it? You can't hold it. You've got it in your phone and your app saying, hey, I've got that many Bitcoins. But you never know. This could go either way. But
only invest money you can afford to lose, basically. That's very important.
Ideal.
Don't gamble
Don't gamble
your life
at all.
savings.
Yeah, the
Please.
wealth at all. But yeah, we're looking at what analysts are saying about gold as well as most of them pointing it out to the U.S. employment data undermining recovery hopes, and you can see how such a precious metal can be fluctuated as a result of certain factors. Bitcoin has nothing to really influence its volatility apart from just the hype surrounding it. So that can be another angle to look at. Commerzbank has been quoted in local media saying that gold's behavior resembled that of a tsunami, with prices receding in the first phase before coming back all the more violently. So you never know where gold prices are going to go in a few months' time as well. Well, for the time being, let's stay tuned to Pulse 95, listen to some music, and we shall return right after that and continuing the discussions here on the Morning Majlis with a bit more of a Southeast Asian focus. This is the Morning Majlis on Pulse 95.
Pulse 95. Between local lines. Notes from the Emirate.
Business here in the Emirate, because we're talking about Sharjah. The Sharjah Entrepreneurship Center has launched its latest program. It's called the Sharjah Startup Studio, or abbreviated at S3.
Yeah.
It's designed to build enduring businesses that will accelerate the region's digital transformation, and also it will contribute to the growth of the non-oil economy here in the UAE. And it just happens to be also the first government-backed startup studio in the nation. And it will go beyond the traditional method of education-based programs. It will take a more of a hands-on approach to venture building. Now, S3, it will dedicate also a team of experienced experts to work alongside the founders, and also will get actively and operationally involved in the creation of the startups as well. Now, the studio models, it lays the foundation for homegrown entrepreneurial success by working with founders from the earliest stages of the startup journey. It will help them to validate their idea and then determine whether to take it to the market further or not. In addition to that, or in addition to the extensive market research, this will also involve the participation and also the feedback of relevant S3 corporate and government partners to ensure that problems are being solved and to evaluate also the proposed solution.
Yeah, and for more detail on this, concepts that are deemed viable will receive technical and financial resources from the S3 ecosystem to build and launch the product. So there's a deep engagement with startups that continues beyond graduation, and S3 will use its extensive market access to support startups and customer acquisition in the long term as well. And in keeping with Sharjah's founder-first philosophy, the S3 is the first startup studio in the region to use a revenue-sharing model where founders retain full ownership of their businesses. Startups in S3 will also receive a host of benefits like business incorporation in Sharjah, access to state-of-the-art co-working spaces at the SRTIP, and founders will also have the opportunity to raise follow-on funding through Sharjah's investment partners after graduating from the studio. This S3 initiative was designed by Sharjah based on the culmination of challenges and difficulties that startups in the UAE and the region have been facing over many years, especially this year now that we're going through the COVID-19 pandemic. And the expectation here is that S3 is going to be a leading contributor to the region's economic structural reforms to boost non-oil growth. And according to a study published by the IMF in late 2020, providing financing options for startups is among the crucial measures recommended to achieve long-term private sector-led growth as part of a wider post-COVID economic recovery plan. So this is going to be a very important institution here in the Emirate.
Yes, it is going to be, and to give the founders of the company $30,000 in pre-seed funding, which could be very, very important and crucial for a business to start up, particularly here in the United Arab Emirates. And The S3, it sounds very similar to what we've had earlier in with the Dubai Design District as well. We've also had that with the N5 in the incubator in DIFC. So S3 is a synergistic convergence of Sharjah's venture building experience, access to markets, leading product development centers, and also helping the program, helping with the unique founder first belief the program will result in a new generation of startups positively contributing towards the socio-economic growth in the country. Aspiring founders and entrepreneurs from across the MENA region are invited to apply for S3 through the Sharjah official website. Now, one of the things that most entrepreneurs and startups would also be hoping for is a slight change in the banking industry. Do drop your text on the text lines 4215 should you wish to disagree or even share the sentiments. Is some of the banks do not even offer startups or a SME to even start a bank account because they just don't believe them. And the other a challenge that might be out there is some banks, even those who agree and allow for the, let's say, remote working or a flexi desk operation, is you need to have a minimum bank balance of 200 or 300,000 dirhams. And then if you don't maintain that, you get charged. So those could be massive challenges. I think that could be a key area to potentially change. And these startups, the Sharjah program, with their $30,000 funding, is quite important for these businesses to get up and running, because apart from the licensing cost, the minimum balance to be kept in a bank account is also a cost that these businesses have to consider. So hopefully these meetings and these ideas sharing are going to address those concerns as well. But do share your thoughts on the text lines 4215 if you are going to be taking part with this, or if you've been involved with the Sharjah. If you've got a success story to share with us, then do get involved on the text lines 4215. Time now for us to take a bit of a break. Apart from Sharjah, we've also got more calls for facilities for investors, and that's also coming from the higher councils in the Emirate of Sharjah, with the Consultative Council also sharing their recommendations. So do stay tuned to Pulse 95. We'll be right back after a bit of a short break.
Pulse 95. Between local lines. Notes from the Emirate.
Well, cases here of COVID-19 is still on the up. It kind of decreased just a little bit, but it's still at a high rate. Right now, as of the latest reports, the new cases here in the UAE that were recorded in the nation, they exceeded 3,150 cases, new cases, and also that brings the total tally of total cases to 368,175 total COVID-19 cases, with 15 recorded deaths just from latest reports. And but thankfully there are also recoveries. There are over 4,000 recoveries. But with that being said, authorities in the UAE, they're leaving nothing to chance when it comes to COVID-19 safety. Now, despite opening up almost all sectors gradually over the past year, authorities, they continued their safety inspection checks to ensure that all precautionary measures are being followed. However, daily inspection reports, they've shown an increase in the number of establishments that have been breaking COVID safety rules. So this actually prompted authorities across the nation to tighten rules a little bit more and introduce new measures across all Emirates here. So 6 Emirates have already tightened the COVID safety rules to curb the spread of the virus. So we're going to take you through the full list of those measures, including the closures, the reduced capacity at malls and offices, and also the compulsory PCR testing for unvaccinated employees across the Emirates. So first, let's start with Fujairah. What's happening in Fujairah?
Well, let's start talking about Fujairah indeed. So what is happening in Fujairah at the moment is that all concerts, music events, and social gatherings will have reduced capacities as well. And that's the main takeaway. Public beaches and parks will have a 70% capacity now, shopping malls at 60%, cinemas and gyms at 50%, and swimming pools at hotels and public transport facilities will also be capped at 50% of their capacity. Now let's move on to Sharjah because they've announced a number of stricter COVID-19 measures as well. All government employees and some private sector staff are now required to undergo PCR testing for COVID-19 regularly. When it comes to establishments, shopping malls and shopping centers have to operate at 60% of their capacity. Cinemas, entertainment centers will only take in 50% of their capacity, and the same can be said for gyms and fitness centers as well at 50%. There will be a reduced capacity for parks and beaches, and all concerts have now been postponed for an extendable 4 weeks. When it comes to the number of people allowed at wedding ceremonies and funeral services, starting off with wedding ceremonies, that number is now capped to 10. And funeral services, 20 people. While at eateries, a maximum of 4 people are allowed to be on the same table, if not from the same family. So if they're one family, the rules are different. But if you have a gathering of friends or people who are not intimately close, then a maximum of 4 people are allowed. And a slew of other rules have been announced in other Emirates as well. Abu Dhabi, for instance, has reduced attendance at its government and semi-government offices to 30%. So they're moving a big chunk of the government and semi-government workforce to work from home. And they're also, like Sharjah, are going to be capping the number of guests for marriage ceremonies and family gatherings at 10 and 20 for funerals and mourning services as well. Aside from that, the big takeaway here across all the 7 Emirates is there will be a limited capacity at various establishments and shopping centers, drastically so from last time, and also the banning of various parties and gatherings. And if you have to have one, like a wedding, you can only have 10 people.
Yeah, that's what it stands at the moment. Even across the other Emirates, so restaurants and cafes are closing down at midnight, and some even closing up till 1 a.m. And the key takeaway here is that the events and gatherings at these restaurants or even at these venues remains suspended for the time being. Capacity at beaches have been reduced at Ras Al Khaimah. Cinemas, events, venues can now take a maximum of 50% capacity in that emirate. Capacity at malls now down to 60%, and wedding celebrations are down to 10, which is similar to what we see in the Emirate of Sharjah. Maximum number of people allowed at wedding ceremonies, even funeral services, to be at 10 and 20 respectively. So these are all in line with the safety precautions in place across the country. What is prominent is the cinema halls, which really restarted as well, following some of the movies that were being released. So in Dubai, they remain at a restricted capacity, and we've also seen that in other parts of the country. But Abu Dhabi, they remain closed. So that's what's happening at the moment. Let us know on the text lines 4215 how it is affecting your day-to-day operations and how this has affected you in your planning for your social events and gatherings. Are you one of those affected by these stringent measures? Do get involved and share your thoughts and opinions. All thoughts are welcome on the text lines 4215, and do get involved in our discussions indeed. What we'll do now is we'll take a bit of a break, and after the break we'll talk about the new influenza appearing from Russia. So we'll keep you posted about that. So do stay tuned to Pulse 95. We'll be right back after some more musical entertainment.
Join the conversation with the Morning Majlis. Pulse 95.
Text us at 4215. We're talking about remote working this segment, and if you have worked remotely during the pandemic, let us know how your experience had gone. Now, look, the UAE's established the fact that it was ready to handle all sorts of challenges during COVID-19 as far as labor is concerned. And in line with that, the United Arab Emirates has ranked first in the Arab world for remote working and 31st globally, a testament to those aforementioned qualities.
I'm looking at the times that the UAE ranked first in a lot of domains. I literally made a list. I'll take you through it, all right?
Okay, let's do it.
Just to mention a few, right? Because there's so many of them. Now, this month we know that the United Arab Emirates became the first Arab country to reach Mars with its Hope probe. UAE is the first country to make aluminum from solar power. This was also this year, another accomplishment that happened in January. The UAE has ranked first on a number of global indices for its efforts to tackle the COVID-19 pandemic. The UAE ranked number one in the region for gender balance, number one in the Arab world for telecom infrastructure, first in the Arab world in human development. UAE ranked first in the Arab world in online service index. We also talked about this on the morning Majlis once. By the end of 2020, the UAE ranked first in the number of COVID-19 tests carried out per capita. In 2018, big news as well, the UAE passport has jumped to number one as the world's most powerful passport. So many rankings. And now we have this, which is the UAE ranking first in the Arab world for its remote working, 31 or 31st globally.
Yeah, looking at the importance of the ability of governments to quickly adapt to unexpected and urgent changes, the government was able to adopt the proactive and deliberate approach to ensure the continuation of the services while preserving the health and safety of human resources by enabling 95% of their workers to work remotely. Here in the Emirate of Sharjah, we've also got a new ruling that is asking and encouraging the government employees to work from home as a result of the current situation and also the preventative measures that are being enforced by the authorities. But yes, so it's great to see how the country operates as a whole. But in terms of our own big debate, do we like working remotely? Are we a fan of working remotely? Lots of people have come back and said that they're now happy with the current situation of working from home. And for us, we have differing thoughts, don't we?
There are two sides of a coin, obviously, for every situation, pros and cons. For me, there are definitely positives and negatives about working remotely, but personally, I prefer working the traditional way. Because of the interaction, the human interaction, the one-on-one interaction, and as you said earlier, Ahmed, that you feel like you're more on point when you're doing things traditional way. Like, you know that you have to get up at, for example, 6 o'clock. You have to be here at 7. You have a show until 10. You're more organized.
Yeah, I'm definitely a fan of drawing
mentally and physically.
Drawing clear lines as to your work and your private life as well. And when you're working from home, these things tend to get a little blurred. Not intentionally or anything. It's just the way that remote working is and how you have to line up tasks and such. So if you're working at a traditional office, for instance, you're a lot more likely to just clock in at work and hopefully get home after finishing your tasks, although a lot of us have to work from home even today because we have more tasks to do as well. But when you're strictly working remotely, things get a little muddled and blurred and you find yourself just ready around the clock for whatever could happen. So I think the blurring of those lines and boundaries is not something I am too personally comfortable with, but it does have its perks. You do save mileage on that car.
Oh, yeah.
You don't have to drive 40 minutes to work every morning. So that's one of the pros as well.
The petrol cost. Very all-important petrol cost as well. The other thing is, a point to consider is as an employee and employer. Now, as an employee, first up, you think, okay, I'm enjoying my work from home. I'm in my own comfortable environment and stuff. The other aspect is, as an employee, your workload increases.
Right.
Definitely.
It does, because there's a lot more.
Especially for us.
Yeah, especially for us, because
we experienced that when we were going through the lockdown.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The pre-planning, because here in the studios, we know exactly how we're going to be distributing a story. When is it person's right to speak? We have our own signs within the studio, raising of hands, saying, okay, I want to speak next, and so on and so forth.
Right.
That is not there. Even though you're on Zoom, you can see each other. It's not there.
Right.
And so it was great that we managed to pull off the radio show from home during the National Disinfection Program. But in other cases, in other companies, in fact, a lot of people have been saying that their workload increases because the line managers do not see you working. So they think we can give you more work.
Right.
Because you're only working. You could be in front of them, not working, and be seen as working. But when you're away and working quite a lot, because they can't see you, they think you're not working.
Oh.
So that's what happens, doesn't it?
It's a conundrum.
Exactly. So let us know on the text line 4215. Do you relate to this, that your line managers look at you and think that you're not working because you're not in front of them? But when you're away from them, when you're in front of them in their own offices, and you could be navigating on browsing different websites, you're still working. It's okay.
But many women in particular, they would prefer remote working.
Yes.
Because of the fact that we have to go through a whole list of things before we come, not unlike you guys.
Are you talking about makeup?
Yes, makeup, getting dressed, fixing our hair. And that is a dilemma of its own every single day. That is something that I miss about remote working. Yeah.
I think that's
I didn't have to go through all of that hassle every morning. Especially so early in the morning. I have to, especially now that we're on YouTube, so everybody can see us on YouTube. So it's not like we're radio personalities only precisely on the radio.
Yeah.
We're actually on YouTube, so you can catch us also on YouTube live. And later on, we're going to post the videos on our playlist. So you have to kind of, be dressed up, kind of. You have to look
presentable.
Decent. Presentable and decent, yeah.
Presentable indeed. Well, do send us your thoughts and messages on the text lines 4215. But there's so many chores you can get done, because during your breaks you can think, oh, I could get this done, and then that's it. Because when you finish work, you do your 9 to 5, or whichever field you're in. Sometimes it could be longer, depending on your field. And you come back home and you're so drawn, you're so tired, fatigued, and worn out that you don't want to do the other chores. And then you think about the traffic, and you think, oh, it's going to be a rush hour, I don't want to go. So all of this just boils down to your own preferences indeed. Well, stay with us on the Morning Majlis. Let's have some more musical entertainment before we conclude the show here on the Pulse 95. We'll be right back after a bit of Rihanna to keep you entertained this morning.
If you liked this episode of The Morning Majlis, drop a like and subscribe.
95.
Be sure to follow us on Instagram for all our daily updates and top stories.
Pulse.